Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Naranarayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Thing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, entitled Creation, Chapter 4, Appearance of Narada, text number 28 and 29. Dhrita Vratena hi maya Chandansi Guruvognayah Manita Nirvyalikena Grihitam Chanusasanam Bharata Vyapadeshena Hi Amnayarthascha Pradarshitaha Drishyate Yatra Dharmadi Stri Sudradi Bhirapyuta Dhritabratena hi maya Chandamsi Guruvognayah Manita Nirvyalikena Grihitam Chanusasanam Bharata Vyapadeshena Hi Amnayarthascha Pradarshitaha Drishyate Yatra Dharmadi Stri Sudradi Bhirapyuta Dhritabratena hi maya Chandamsi Guruvognayah Manita Nirvyalikena Grihitam Chanusasanam Bharata Vyapadeshena Hi Amnayarthascha Pradarshitaha Drishyate Yatra Dharmadi Stri Sudradi Bhirapyuta. Chandansi Guruvognayah Manita Nirvyalikena Grihitam Chanusasanam Bharata Vyapadeshena Hiyam Nayarthascha Pradarshitaha Drishyate Yatra Dharmadi Stri Sudradi Bhirapyuta Dhritabratena hi maya Chandansi Guruvognayah Manita Nirvyalikena गृहीतं चानुशासनं भारतव्यपदेशेन हीमाम्नायार्थश्च प्रदर्शितः दृश्यते यत्र धर्मादि स्त्रीशूद्रादिभिरपि उत तेन हि मया छन्दांसि गुरवोऽग्नयः मानिता निर्व्यलीकेन गृहीतं चानुशासनं भारतव्यपदेशेन हीयाम्नायार्थश्च प्रदर्शितः दृश्यते यत्र धर्मादि स्त्रीशूद्राभिरपि उत छन्दांसि गुरवोऽग्नयः मानिता निर्व्यलीकेन गृहीतं चानुशासनं भारतव्यपदेशेन हीयाम्नायार्थश्च प्रदर्शितः दृश्यते यत्र धर्मादि स्त्रीशूद्रादिभिरपि उत धृतव्रतेन हि मया छन्दांसि गुरुवोऽग्नयः मानिता निर्व्यलीकेन गृहीतं चानुशासनं भारतव्यपदेशेन हीयाम्नायार्थश्च प्रदर्शितः दृश्यते यत्र धर्मादि स्त्रीशूद्रादिभिरपि उत धृतव्रतेन हि मया छन्दांसि गुरवोऽग्नयः मानिता निर्व्यलीकेन गृहीतं चानुशासनं भारतव्यपदेशेन हीयाम्नायार्थश्च प्रदर्शितः दृश्यते यत्र धर्मादि स्त्रीशूद्रादिभिरपि उत धृतव्रतेन हि मया छन्दांसि गुरवोऽग्नयः मानिता निर्व्यलीकेन गृहीतं चानुशासनं भारतव्यपदेशेन हीयाम्नायार्थश्च प्रदर्शितः दृश्यते यत्र धर्मादि स्त्रीशूद्रादिभिरपि उत धृतव्रतेन हि मया छन्दांसि गुरवोऽग्नयः मानिता निर्व्यलीकेन गृहीतं चानुशासनं भारतव्यपदेशेन हीयाम्नायार्थश्च प्रदर्शितः दृश्यते यत्र धर्मादि स्त्रीशूद्रादिभिरपि उत धृतव्रतेन हि मया छन्दांसि गुरवोऽग्नयः मानिता निर्व्यलीकेन Grihitam chanusasanam Bharatavyapadeshena Iyam nayarthascha pradarshitaha Drishyate yatra dharmadi Sri Sudradi Bhirapiyuta. Online.
Dhritapratina himaya
Dhritabratena himaya
chandasi guraganaha
Chandamsi Guravognayah
manita nirvilikena
Manita Nirvalikena
grihitam chanusasanam
Grihitam Chanusasanam
bharata vyapatesena
Bharatavyapadeshena
hi amartacha pradarshitaha
Iyam Nayarthascha Pradarshitaha
drishyate yatra dharmadi
Drishyate Yatra Dharmadi
stri sudravir api utta.
Sri Sudradibhirapiyuta.
Dhrutavratena himaya
Dhritabratena himaya
Chandamsi Guravognayah
Chandamsi Guravognayah
Manita Nirvyalikena
Manita Nirvalikena
Grihitam Chanusasanam
Grihitam Chanusasanam
Bharatavyapadesena
Bharatavyapadeshena
Yamna Yardascha Pradarshitaha
Iyam Nayarthascha Pradarshitaha
Drishyate Yatra Dharmadi
Drishyate Yatra Dharmadi
Sri Sudradibirapiyuta.
Sri Sudradibhirapiyuta. Synonyms: Dhritabratena, under a strict disciplinary vow. He, certainly. Maya, by me. Chandamsi, the Vedic hymns. Guravaha, the spiritual masters. Agnayaha, the sacrificial fire. Manitaha, properly worshipped. Nirvalikena, without pretense. Grihitam cha, also accepted. Anusasanam, traditional discipline. Bharata, the Mahabharata. Vyapadeshena, by compilation of. He, certainly. Amnaya arthaha, import of disciplic succession. Cha, and. Pradarshitaha, properly explained. Drishyate, by what is necessary. Yatra, where. Dharma adihi, the path of religion. Stri Sudra adibhi api, even by women, Sudras, etc. Uta, spoken. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation: I have under strict disciplinary vows unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual masters, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Sudras, and others, friends of the twice born, can see the path of religion. Translation with repetition. I have under strict disciplinary vows unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual masters, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Sudras, and others, friends of the twice born, can see the path of religion. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. No one can understand the import of the Vedas without having undergone a strict disciplinary vow and disciplic succession. The Vedas, spiritual masters, and sacrificial fire must be worshipped by the desiring candidate. All these intricacies of Vedic knowledge are systematically presented in the Mahabharata for the understanding of the woman class, the liberal class, and the unqualified members of Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishya families. In this age, the Mahabharata is more essential than the original Vedas. Thus ends the wonderful transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So this is the first Sunday of 2021, the first spiritual Sunday where you all have assembled to hear something very interesting from Srimad Bhagavatam. This verse is spoken by Vyasadeva, interestingly, if you don't know, because in the last verse, the translation was, thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself. So this is Vyasadeva talking to himself within. Sometimes we do this self-talk. What is he talking? He's saying, I have under strict disciplinary vows unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual masters, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Sudras, and others, friends of the twice born, can see the path of religion. So if you see this entire chapter, it says the appearance of Sri Narada, but it also talks about how Bhagavatam came into existence. What is the reason? How did Bhagavatam come about? That will come in the subsequent chapters and the verses as we see. But one clear thing which is mentioned here is Vedavyas was dissatisfied. Yes, the last week's verse, the last to last week's verse, we've been seeing that after compiling the entire Vedic literatures, Vedavyas within was not satisfied. And that is the reason how Narad Muni will appear and he will instruct, and then Bhagavatam will come about. But that's going to come. But in this today's verse, very interestingly, Vedavyas is talking to himself that he did all these things. He followed some strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual masters, and the altar of sacrifice. And there's a beautiful purport by Prabhupada, even though there are only 3-4 lines in that, but conveys a lot about how we should practice spiritual life, how we can understand the Vedas, which are not easy to understand, which are not easy to comprehend. So before we understand what exactly Prabhupada is telling in this purport, which we can try to apply in our lives, I thought it is very, very important to remember how Bhagavatam is so wonderful. And even though, we may have so many worries and anxieties and so many kinds of tensions, when we come and hear Bhagavatam, how it is so wonderful and so relishable. And this is very aptly summarized in this verse of 12th Canto 12, chapter 50th verse. I've shared this earlier also. The verse is Tadeva Ramyam Ruchiram Navam Navam Tadeva Saswan Manaso Mahotsavam Tadeva Sokar Navasoshanam Nrinam Yaduttama Shloka Yasho Nugiyate. So this wonderful composition of Srimad Bhagavatam, when we come together and hear and discuss or read, there are three things which are mentioned. Tadeva Ramyam, it is very attractive. Tadeva Ramyam, Ruchiram, and it is very relishable. Tadeva Ramyam, Ruchiram, and Navam, Navam, it is very fresh. Even if it is the same verse which we are discussing today, if we have discussed this yesterday, doesn't matter, it is still very fresh. The same verse can be seen from different angles, from different visions. Tadeva Ramyam Ruchiram Navam Navam. And what is it saying? It is Manaso Mahotsavam. It's a great festival for the mind. We don't need to wait for some festival to come. Just by being present in Bhagavatam class, by hearing this wonderful nectarian glorification of the Supreme Lord, who also has got a name called Uttama Shloka, because he is glorified with the choicest words. Whose mobile, can you put it in silent? So, Manaso Mahotsavam, it's a great festival, not just simple festival. Maha Utsavam, Manaso Mahotsavam, it's a big festival for the mind. Yad Uttama Shloka Yasho Anugiyate, when we are hearing this nectarian message which glorifies the Supreme Lord, Yasho, his fames, his glories, his activities, Anugiyate, when we are singing, then it becomes a festival for the mind. And what else? The fourth thing which I didn't mention is Tadeva Sokaranava Soshanam Nrinam. The ocean of miseries that we are inside, Sokaranava, lamentation, miseries, grief, Soshanam Nrinam, it becomes dried up by just hearing this wonderful nectarian message of Srimad Bhagavatam. Those words describing the glories of the all-famous personality of Godhead are attractive, relishable, and ever fresh. Indeed, such words are a perpetual festival for the mind, and they dry up the ocean of misery. So let's see today's verse. Okay, I have that. Where is my verse? Okay, the verse is Dhrita Bratena hi maya Chandamsi Guruvognaya Manita Nirvalikena. The word Nirvalikena is a very significant word which means without pretension, pretenselessly. I don't know what is the without pretense. Nirvalikena. Grihitam Chanusasanam Bharata Vyapadeshena Hi Amnayarthascha Pradarshitah Drishyate Yatra Dharmadi Stri Sudradi Bhir Abhyuta Dhrita Bratena. We were meditating on that verse during Kartik meditation. Yesham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvanda moha nirmukta bhajante mam dridha brata. So this is dhrita bratena. Similar, dridha brata or dhrita bratena. It's a strict disciplinary vow. Dhrita bratena hi maya chandamsi gurovo gnayaha. Chandamsi is Vedic literature. Chandamsi asya paranani. Yastam Vedas Vedavid. 15th chapter, when we were chanting Purushottam Yoga, then the word is Chandamsi is used. So this is referring to the Vedic hymns. Chandamsi Dhrita Bratena hi maya, with a great strict disciplinary vow towards three things. Chandamsi Gurovo Gnayaha. all to the spiritual masters, to Agni, and to Vedic hymns. Manita nirvalikena, without any pretense, not simply for the sake of doing externally. Internally, something else is there, but externally, what to do, I have to do, not like that. Without pretense. Bharata Vyapadeshena. And he also compiled, he compiled Mahabharata for the less intelligent class, so that people can take up this path of religion, can see the path of religion. The one other word which I want you to pay attention in this verse is the word Amnaya. Amnaya is used at multiple different places. If you search in Vedas, in various places you'll find Amnaya, but wherever the word Amnaya used, wherever it is used, that means it has got to do with the Vedic literatures. It is always in connection with the Vedic literature. It is about understanding the Vedic literature. So this is a verse from Mukundamala Stotra, and the first word itself is Amnaya. It's a very beautiful verse. I thought I'll share this verse and then we will proceed. Amnaya bhyasanani aranyaruditam Veda Bratani Anva Medas Cheda Phalani Putra Bidhaya Sarvam Hutam Bhasmani Tirthanam. I think I'm getting in the wrong. Tirthanam Avaghanani Cha Gajasnanam Vinayatpada Dwanda. This is not the, I have to get the right melody. Okay. Let's read the verse. Amnaya Vyasanani Aranya Ruditam Veda Bratani Anvaham Medas Cheda Palani Purta Bidhaya Sarvam Hutam Bhasmani Tirthanam Avaghanani Cha Gajasnanam Bina Yatpada Dvandvam Borhuha Samshritim Vijayate Devahasa Narayana. This verse is very, very interesting. What it says is Amnaya Bhyasanani Aranya Ruditam. Amnaya Bhyasanani means if somebody is chanting this Vedic verses, Amnaya, and trying to understand Bhyasanani by strict practice, Amnaya Bhyasanani Aranya Ruditam. It is actually equivalent to crying in a forest crying. Suppose somebody goes to a forest and yells or just cries very loudly. Amnaya Bhyasanani Aranya Ruditam. So this practice of Vedic literatures or chanting of these verses are like Aranya Ruditam. Veda Vratani Anvaham. Veda Vratani Anvaham Medas Cheda Phalani. So sometimes our Bhargava Prabhu, he does some austerity of taking some vrata of not eating certain food. And then that's how he can reduce the weight, right? So this verse is telling Veda Vratani Anvaham Medas Cheda Phalani. Veda Vratani. Sometimes people take some vows from Vedas. They hear something here and there and they take some vrata. Anvaham. It is actually that vrata is like a weight carrying on the head, which is, or it is just meant for Medas Cheda Phalani. It is just for reducing the weight or something. Purta Vidhya Sarvam Hutam Bhasmani. If after the sacrifice is over, fire sacrifice, the ashes are there, and then you pour ghee on that. It's of no use. Tirthanam avaghanani cha gajasnanam. And somebody goes to Tirtha and he takes bath, but that is like gajasnanam. Gajasnanam is, after that he again puts, dust on top of him. All these things, these are all important, but he is saying, King Kulashekara is saying, Amnaya Abhyasani. If somebody is chanting the Vedic slokas, but he's not doing something, then it becomes Aranya Ruditam. Similarly, Veda Vratani Anvaham. Similarly, the Veda Vratas will become a burden on the head, or it will just become, meant for a reduction of weight, or this Sarva Vidhim, whatever is the prescribed duties of Vedas, if somebody is following, it can become like, pouring the oblations in the ashes. If somebody doesn't do one thing, or Tirthanam Avaghanani cha Gajasnanam. If you go to some place of pilgrimage and just take baths in some holy river, that will become Gajasnanam. When will it become? Vina yat pada dvandvam bahruha samshritim vijayate deva sanarayana. If within the heart, if we are not carrying Krishna or Narayana, if in the heart Vishnu is missing, all these things becomes just a burden. It just lacks the meaning. The translation is all glories to Lord Narayana. Without remembrance of his lotus feet, recitation of scripture is merely crying in the wilderness. Regular observance of severe vows enjoined in the Vedas is no more than a way to lose weight. Execution of prescribed pious duties is like pouring oblations onto ashes, and bathing at the various holy sites is no better than an elephant's bath. So without carrying the lotus feet of the Lord in our heart, these are all useless. We were seeing the other day also the verse which I quoted from Bhagavatam. Where is it? At 2:3:17. Ayur harati vaipumsam udayan astan chayanaso tasyarte yat kshano nita uttama shloka vartaya. Ayur harati vaipumsam. We may do so many activities throughout the day. But what we don't realize is that every rising of the sun and the setting of the sun, Ayur harati vaipumsam udayan astan chayanaso. When the sun rises and sun sets, it takes away one very important day of our life. It just goes. There is no exception to that, no matter whether you are a child, an old man, or middle-aged, reaching on the labyrinth of becoming a middle-aged person, whatever, wherever you are. Ayur harati, why? Certainly it takes away for all people. Udayan astan chayanaso tasyarte yat kshano nita uttama shloka vartaya. Tasyarte yat kshano nita uttama shloka vartaya. Rite is an exception. There is an exception to this, except for those who are engaged in hearing, discussing, and glorifying the words of Uttama Shloka Vartaya, discussing the pastimes of the Lord. It is not that they will be the material laws of nature will not work on that body. It is not true. That will work definitely. The body will perish, no doubt, but they will make progress towards the eternal life. Their consciousness is getting evolved, and they are making progress towards that eternal life. They are exempt from this law. Ayur harati vaipumsam. So when we do a analysis of our previous year, it is important to know how much time did I spend on this and how much time did I spend in any other activities. How much I am able to remember the Lord in my heart, because that is the real trick. That is the real thing which makes all the difference. So anyway, the Amnaya, the word, if you see anywhere, it has got to do with the understanding of Vedic literatures. That's what it is. So this is the verse. And the purport Prabhupada starts, no one can understand the import of the Vedas without having undergone a strict disciplinary vow and disciplic succession. So understanding the import of the Vedas, it's a very important word. That's what Amnaya is. No one can understand the import of the Vedas without having undergone a strict disciplinary vow and disciplic succession. Let's try to understand this a little more. When we were doing this Kartik meditation, I had shared this verse earlier. It's a very beautiful verse. It says, Sabda Brahma Sudur Bodham Pranendriya Manomayam Ananta Param Gambhiram Durbi Gahyam Samudravat. And the translation is, the transcendental sound of the Vedas is very difficult to comprehend and manifests on different levels within the prana, senses, and mind. This Vedic sound is unlimited very deep and unfathomable, just like the ocean. This was the analogy of the ocean. Now, it's a very important thing. Actually, we all have different levels of consciousness, different realms of our existence. Most of us are, most of the times, in the bodily concept of life. But some of us realize that we are also not this body, we are in the, there is a mind, there is an intelligence, which are more subtle. And then even subtler than that is our pranavayu or the spirit soul, which is even more sukshma, very, very subtle. But there are different realms of existence. So here it is mentioned, Sudurbodham, the transcendental sound of the Vedas is very difficult to comprehend. It's not easy at all. Not just Durbodham, Sudurbodham, very, very difficult to comprehend. And manifests on different levels within the prana, senses, and mind. Prana, Indriya, Manomayam. This Vedic sound is unlimited, Anantaparam, Gambhiram. And the analogy is such an apt analogy, like an ocean, which, the depth of that ocean, we can't fathom it. Or how wide is an ocean? Anantaparam, Gambhiram, Durbigayam, Samudravat. It's very deep, it's unlimited and unfathomable, just like the ocean. There is this famous author who I have mentioned about him earlier also, by name T.S. Eliot, who's a Nobel laureate also. He says this one line which is very, very powerful. He says, where is the wisdom which is lost in knowledge? And where is the knowledge which is lost in information? Sometimes we try to read Vedic literature by our intelligence or by our skills. Say, for example, somebody says, I will read Bhagavad Gita myself. So I will take a Bhagavad Gita book and I'll try to read myself. But that is actually just one level of gathering information. Even for gathering information, we need intelligence. Information gathering is not easy. Even to sit in one place to gather information, we need intelligence. And once that information is gathered, probably we can, if there is no attention or if there is no intelligence, then information is not gathered, then we can think of, there is a retention. The retention comes much later. But first, even to gather that attention and intelligence is required. That's why our Bhagavad Gita verse, which we were discussing this during our journey through Bhagavad Gita, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. You see, the word tattvadarshi is very important, right? Because Krishna says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vetti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti swajuna. So he's telling Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vetti tattvataha. One has to know the birth and activities of the Supreme Lord in tattva. And this verse 4.34, it is saying tattvadarshi, a person who has seen the truth, he can impart this knowledge. And unlike the material knowledge which we try to extract and take and read and master it, spiritual knowledge doesn't come like that. That is why they are saying the transcendental sound of the Vedas is very difficult to comprehend and manifests on different levels within the prana and senses in the mind. Different levels it can touch. First thing is, at least one should have respect for the authority. We should have great respect for the spiritual master who's transmitting this message. That respect develops kind of an attraction, attention. Oh, this is given by Srila Prabhupada, let me pay attention to this. Unless that respect is there, attention also will not be there. Now, once we receive the information, then only that information has to transform to knowledge. And that verse, that vidhi pranipatena, very important verse, because it says the first thing that is required is humility. Pranipatena, first thing is pranipat. Accept a bona fide spiritual master coming in the disciplic succession to receive the knowledge. So it's like a bowl or like a vessel that you carry, which must be empty so that the knowledge can be given by the spiritual master. So pranipats. So the qualification of a genuine seeker is he comes with this understanding or background. I don't know. That's exactly what Sanatana Goswami did. That all these people around me, they consider me to be a scholar because I know so many languages. But I'm with carrying straw in my mouth. He was falling at Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's feet, saying, "Ke ami, who am I? Keno jarai ame tapot troy." Why these threefold miseries are inflicted upon me? I don't know. So that the first qualification is humility. Tad vidhi pranipatena, accepting the bona fide spiritual master with an open mind to hear this, to receive that knowledge in a pot, in an empty vessel. Then pariprashnena, so that information can transform to knowledge if there is submissive inquiry, inquiries which are not challenging. For example, in Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna, in the 4th chapter, spoke about what did he speak? The beginning. Imam vivasvate yogam proktavan aham abhyayam vivasvan manave praha manur ikshva kave pravet. And then he said, evam parampara praptam imam rajashaya viduhu sakalena hamata yoga nashta parandava. Then at that point in time, Arjuna had a doubt. He said, aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvataha katham etad bijaniyan twadado proktavan iti. So this is he's asking, I am actually your contemporary. How can I understand that you spoke this knowledge to Vivaswan, sun god, who's many, many years senior to you? Because we try to understand this knowledge with our mundane logic, and when it doesn't work, the logic doesn't work there, one has to inquire. That's exactly what Arjuna did, is asking this kind of a humble question to Krishna. And there Krishna mentions, Bahuni me gatitani janmani tavacha Arjuna. Tani aham veda sarvani natvam vetta parantapa. Bahuni me gatitani. Many births have gone, O Arjuna. You don't remember all of those, but I remember all of them. That's how it is possible that I have imparted this knowledge to Sun God many years ago. So first you need to have the bowl of humility to receive the knowledge, then pariprashnena, then the right relevant inquiries in a submissive mode to transform the information to knowledge. And then the most important thing is sevaya, tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. Only when one engages in devotional service to the spiritual master that this knowledge transforms to wisdom, realized knowledge. Otherwise, realization will not come. This is Sabda Brahma Sudur Bodham. Sudur Bodham. It's not I'll take this book. Sometimes people ask, where are the Vedas? As if they can buy the Vedas on their own, and they can read and they can understand everything. It is extremely difficult. Just to give you an example how difficult it is, in the 6th chapter there is a verse which you might be knowing, 6.5. Uddharet atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayat atmeva hi atmano bandhur atmeva ripuratmana. The word atma is used multiple times by Krishna. So if somebody is a Sanskrit scholar and sees that, okay, Atma, maybe he understood that it is spirit soul, but if he fits that one meaning over there, it doesn't give the complete understanding of that verse. One word can have multiple meanings, and based on the context, it takes a meaning, and that can only be understood from a guru who's coming in parampara, in disciplic succession. If you don't get that, even simpler than this is the word saindhav. We say the salt that we use, saindhav, salt. The word saindhav also means horse. So suppose someone is having his lunch and he asks for saindhav, and a Sanskrit scholar goes somewhere and finds a horse and brings it for him. So like that, so it is very difficult. Sudurbodham, anantaparam gambhiram, and then there are sometimes apparent variations. There are on the surface there seems to be some kind of contradictions. Sometimes it says Stri Sudra this thing, and then some people get agitated. Right? Stri ko bol diya, Stri. What about me? Why this kind of discrepancies? Well, the discrepancies is not there in the Vedic scripture. The discrepancies is there in our understanding, in our mind. There is absolutely no discrepancy in the Vedic literatures. It's because our level of understanding has not gone deeper. We're not able to appreciate it. Like an ocean, which is still within, as we go down, as we go deep, it's very still. There is a thing which is unifying the water, which is like, it is still, but on the surface you can have some variation, some kind of varieties. Like that, the Vedic literatures may have some apparent contradictions, so-called apparent contradictions based on our mundane logic and fertile brain. But when we go deeper, it is just that we've not understood it fully. We've not gone. Otherwise, there is nothing, no contradictions. Sabda Brahma Sudurbodham Pranendriya Manomayam Ananta Param Gambhiram Durbigahyam Samudravat. So this whole spiritual knowledge is actually given in the heart. And how does that happen? I was telling the process. First is receiving the information. You need to have the humility to accept it in a bowl. If you come with a attitude that I know everything in this world, tell me what you want to tell. I will verify it with my logic, senses, intelligence. If it passes, then I'll accept. Otherwise, I'll reject. We're not receiving even the information. So humility gives us the access to the information, and then by proper questioning, it becomes knowledge. And by engaging in devotional service to the spiritual master, Sevaya, it becomes a realized knowledge or wisdom. So when we engage in devotional service to the spiritual master, what exactly happens? Well, the trick, what happens is the spiritual master becomes pleased. And when the spiritual master is pleased, the entire Guru Parampara, here it is mentioned, the word is used here is a plural. The word that was used here. Guru. Guru. Spiritual master. So entire Guru Parampara becomes pleased. And that mercy, when there is a channel which gets established within our heart, and the mercy starts flowing, that this knowledge becomes realized. We see this in the beginning of Bhagavatam itself, where it is mentioned, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Janmarasya yada anvaya vitaratas charteshu abhigyaswara, tene brahma hridaya adi kavaye mushyanti yat suraya. This knowledge was imparted to Brahma in his heart. Tene Brahma hridaya adi kavaye mushyanti yat suraya. Or when we sing this Guru Puja song, Divya Gyan Hriday Prakasito. This manifests in our heart, Divya Gyan Hriday Prakasito, by the mercy of Guru and the entire Guru Parampara. There's another. So this is the trick. This is the secret, actually. We sing in the morning, or Mangalarti, that's what I was. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasadam, yasya aprasadan nagati kutopi. The secret of advancing in spiritual life is pleasing spiritual master. Finding a bona fide spiritual master and pleasing him. That's how this becomes realized. Otherwise, days, months, years will pass by, but to get this realized knowledge is not easy. Otherwise, it remains like, it is saying that there are different levels of the sound. The Vedic sound is unlimited, very deep and unfathomable, just like the ocean. Actually, if you see the purport, Prabhupada says, not Prabhupada, the disciples of Prabhupada, they're quoting that there are 4 different levels of understanding of this Vedic literature. We can just cram some verses, we can memorize, but nothing happens within because it's not getting realized. It's far from making the transformation. Of course, there's a lot of sincerity required, intelligence required, attention required to first hold that, and then submissive inquiry to come to the state of knowledge and to make it realized. Interestingly, of course, this verse, all of us we know, Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha guru Tasyaite kasita hi artha prakasante mahatmana. This is from Svetaswatar Upanishad. Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha guru. Unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. There's a tremendous significance and importance given to have a pure devotee spiritual master in our life, and to have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master. All the imports of Vedic knowledge, this is that Amnaya, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed to him. I want to share one story, very interesting story. It comes in Bhagavatam, but not in full, but it is there in bits and pieces in many places. You all know about the demon called Vritrasur, right? Who killed Vritrasur? Indra. Arvind. People prefer अभी रहने दो अभी ऊपर उठेंगे तो प्रॉब्लम है आ जाएगा क्वेश्चन who killed Vritrasur? Indra actually killed. Question if it is asked and there is a pause, then doubts start coming. Really, Indra? Did I say right? So Indra actually killed Vritrasura, and Indra used a thunderbolt which is made by the bones of Dadhichi only to kill Vritrasur. So when Vritrasur was killed, Indra actually, because of the sin that he committed of killing a devotee, he was chased by the sin. There is a chapter in Bhagavatam, it says the sin personified actually started chasing Indra. Sorry. So Indra had to run, literally. He was hiding somewhere in some water and something and all. So in the meantime, what happened? In the heaven, the post was vacant. There was no Indra. So they searched who can be a stopgap Indra, king of heaven. Do you know who became the stopgap Indra? No. So there is a person by name Nahusha. Nahusha, he, based on his qualification and his position, he was asked to become, take the position of Indra. Sometimes I think in our country also it happened. There was a prime minister who came for a stopgap thing, right? I think it was Chandrasekhar. Who was that? One during VP Singh. Chandrasekhar was there for 13 days or something, right? Huh? Apat? Yeah. So whatever. So since Indra was not there, they made Nahusha Indra. So he came. Now imagine, like I was telling the prime minister. So suppose the prime minister is gone or something has happened, and there is a stopgap prime minister who has come. So he is given the prime minister's bungalow. This is the prime minister's bungalow. This is the prime minister's car. These are all the attendants. They'll all be now reporting to you. These are all yours. If suddenly the prime minister says, "What about the previous prime minister's wife? I want her also." I mean, you can use the bungalow, the facilities and all. But something similar to that happened when Nahusha told that I want Indra's wife. Indra's wife was Sachi. So he told, I want Sachi because I'm Indra now. So you have to come. And then Sachi went to Brihaspati. What should I do now? He's asking me. So Brihaspati told, just tell him to wait for some time. Sachi was saying, what do you mean by wait for some time? Is it some kind of joke or what? Nothing doing. Brihaspati told, don't worry, just ask him to wait. And then after some time, Brihaspati tells Sachi that it is not looking nice that, I have to go to your place Rather, why don't you come to my place? And only when you come to my place, being carried by the Saptarishis in palanquin, I'll accept you. So when he put that condition, actually Saptarishis are like gurus. They're rishis, and Nahusha ordered them, carry me in a palanquin, they carried them. And then he's coming. When he was so infatuated and he was so forgot everything, and then he's coming. So when this Saptarishis are carrying Nahusa, there was a conversation where they said something from Vedic literature that there is a circumstance where even the cow can be eaten. Something like that was there. And this fellow said it cannot be. Cow cannot be eaten under any circumstances. And when he uttered that word, actually Brihaspati was very intelligent. He knew how to tackle the situation. He told, that's why, Arvind Prabhu, who was Brihaspati? And if you are feeling sleepy, you can just stand up. So Brihaspati was very intelligent. He knew how to tackle the situation. That's why he told that you should ask him to be carried by the Saptarishis. And the moment he said that the cow cannot be killed under any circumstances, one of the Saptarishis cursed him to become a serpent. The reason I'm telling this story is the Vedic instructions are true in all circumstances. Even if that person it's saying it apparently looks like, how can the cow be killed under some circumstances? I don't remember the exact line, but there's something like cow go bhakshanam or something like that. So when he said that, they cursed him and he became a serpent. Actually, that Nahusha had 6 sons, and one of them is Yayati, who comes his son. After he became serpent, the first son, he became a renunciant, a sannyasi. He went somewhere because my father gone serpent ho gaya. So he left. Then the second son becomes king. That is Yayati. But anyway, so that's the importance of this Vedic literature, and that is why this thing Durbodham, Sudurbodham, it is not easy. It doesn't go inside, but it is true. We are not able to understand. We are not able to fathom the depth of this Vedic literature and the Vedic instruction. How do we get this? Very interestingly, if you see the beginning of Bhagavatam, and with this we'll close. The beginning, when this entire Bhagavatam is started, there is a verse. We all know this. The sages have assembled and they are asking these questions to Sutta Goswami. They have asked 6 questions, but their real question was Dharma kam saranam gataha. The last question, the 6th question. They're actually saying now that Krishna has gone, who's the maintainer and who upholds this religious principles. Now he is gone. So Dhamma upagate dharma jnanadi visaha. Then where is the religious principle has taken shelter? That's what they want to know. So when they are asking these questions to Sutta Goswami, why did they choose Sutta Goswami? And how there is a very important thing, because it is talking about disciplic succession, spiritual master. What are the qualities? Here it is mentioned, Tvaya khalu puranani seti hasani chanadha akhyatani api adhitani dharma sastrani yani uta. Tvaya khalu puranani seti hasani chanadha. Actually, the first qualification of a spiritual master or anybody who's sitting in the Vyasasana, cha anagha, has to be sinless. Completely sinless. Anagha, agha is sin. Cha anagha is sinless. Tvaya khalu puranani seti hasani cha anagha akhyatani api adhitani dharma sastrani yani uta. They said you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in all the scriptures famous for religious life and in the Puranas and the histories. Tvaya khalu puranani sa itihasani. And the very important characteristic is akhyatani api adhitani. So what is that? That means, you have akhyatani, you have explained them. Explained them means you have lived yourself, your life with those religious principles. You have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them. Akhyatani api adhitani. Very important. Dharma sastrani yani uta. That's why, you are befitting. And then the next one, they say, Yani Veda Vidam Shreshto Bhagavan Badarayanaha Anyecha munaya suta paravaro vido viduhu. Being the eldest learned Vedantist, O Sutta Goswami, you are acquainted with the knowledge of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead. And you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge. You see what all qualifications Sutta Goswami had. He was also knowing other sages who are well versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge. Being the eldest learned Vedantist, you are acquainted with the knowledge of the Vyasadeva. So that's what we are reading, who is the incarnation of Godhead. And so sometimes a question may come, when we are giving this classes, like, we are sitting, of course, Madhupani Prabhu has very clearly, clarified this, that it is not Vyasasana, it is Klasasana. But even to sit here on a Klasasana, how can we do it? That's because, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has told, Amar Agya Guru Hai, Taro Desh, Jare Dekho Tare Kaho, Krishna Upadesh. So it is by the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one has to speak Krishna Upadesh. Krishna Upadesh actually refers to the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, spoken personally by the Lord, as well as Bhagavatam. Krishna Upadesh, Prabhupada clearly says about Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. When we speak by the instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by our superiors, then it is still okay. The next qualification which Sutta Goswami had was Vetatvam Saumya Tat Sarvam Tatvatastad Anugrahat Bruju Snigdasya Sisyasya Guruvo Gushyam Apyuta. Very important thing is that humility. And because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Actually, Sutta Goswami, before this, the sages had selected Romaharshana Sutta. But he was all qualified. He knew all the scriptures. He had received this knowledge. But then when Lord Balaram came there, he didn't offer respect. And Lord Balaram, being the Supreme Lord, knew what's going on in his heart. And his head was cut off. He was beheaded. So if you remember in the Nectar of Instruction, Prabhupada writes in the preface that the progress in spiritual life is dependent on the attitude of the devotee. So if the attitude is not correct, no matter what all you have, big skills, big this thing, is of no use. Romaharshana Sutta was killed because the Lord in the heart knows what's going on. And that's how they got Sutta Goswami. And here is mentioned, Vetatvam Saumya Tat Sarvam Tatvatastad Anugrahan Bruyu Snigdasya Sisyasya. Because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore, you can tell us that all that you have scientifically learned from them. And so when they have selected, they also say the problems of this Kali Yuga. That's all of us. First of all, Sudur Bodham. And so, Gambhiram, Durantaparam, all this Vedic literature is so complicated, so difficult. Then they additionally talk about the characteristics of all of us who are born in this Kali Yuga. And this verse is a very, okay. Here there is a very important line which Prabhupada writes, the secret of success in spiritual life is in satisfying the spiritual master and thereby getting his sincere blessings, which I was trying to say earlier. This verse, which the sages say, is Prayana Alpa Ayusaha Sabhya Kalo Asmin Yuge Janaha Mandaha Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagyahi Patrita. We know this verse very well. Prayana Alpa Ayusaha. Most of the people in this Kali Yuga are short-lived. Alpa Ayusaha. I heard somebody in my family, I don't know, 40s or 50s, died in a massive heart attack. Just one heart attack, finished, is over. Prayana Alpa. So nowadays, people are, especially who are working in IT and all, so much of stress, so many these things. They get 6-figure salary, but 6 years, enough. What happens, nobody knows. Dalai Lama famously says that, people sacrifice their health to get the wealth, and then they use up all the wealth to recuperate on their health. So prayana alpayusha sabhya. Most of the people in this Kali Yuga are short-lived. So we are celebrating Happy New Year. We don't know really. Alpayusha sabhya kalau asmin yuge janaha. Manda, lazy. Sumanda matayo. Sumanda matayo is actually misguided. Manda bhagya, unfortunate, and upadraka. All these words which are used here in this verse, if you really want to understand the meaning of them, you must read the purport. Very, very instructive purport. How a person becomes Alpa Ayusha. And Prabhupada says in the purport, actually it is, the duration of life is, I'm just taking some few lines from the purport, but very, very, very instructive. The duration of life is shortened not so much because of insufficient food, but because of irregular habits. Habits which are irregular, no discipline. By keeping regular habits and eating simple food, any man can maintain his health. Overeating, over sense gratification, over dependence on another's mercy, and artificial standards of living sap the very vitality of human energy. Therefore, the duration of life is shortened. So it is not the shortage of food, it is because of irregular habits. Sometimes I'll get up, sometimes I'll eat, sometimes whenever I feel like doing, I'll do that, sometimes I'll sleep late, sometimes it has to be regulated. That's what Krishna says, yukta hara viharasya, yukta chestasya sopna, yukta sopna bhavodasya. Regulation, that yukta, balancing. And simple food, eating simple food. Any man can maintain his health. So that is the first one, Alpa Ayusa. Then he says Manda. How a person becomes Manda? What do you mean by Manda? Dull. How a person can become dull? Prabhupada says very interestingly. That is to say, man should come to know what he is, what the world is, what the supreme truth is. Human life is a means by which the living entity can end all the miseries of the hard struggle for life in material existence, and by which he can return to Godhead, his eternal home. But due to a bad system of education, the problem lies in the education that we get. But due to a bad system of education, men have no desire for self-realization. You see, how many people? Even if they come to know about it, then comes the next one. But due to a bad system of education, men have no desire for self-realization. So even if somebody comes now after that, so Alpa Ayusa is there, irregular lifestyle, then one bad system of education one has gone through, and then it's all dull, no desire for self-realization, only sense gratification, only. But if someone overcomes all these two, then he comes, then there is Sumanda Matayo, misguided. There are so many people who are saying what we are saying is true. This is right path. Sambhog se samadhi, all kinds of things. No proper disciplic succession starting from Krishna, nothing, where the source is, but people are madly going after them. Sumanda Matayo. And if someone still overcomes that, Manda Bhagya Upadrata, always disturbed in their mind, always disturbed in their body. Body problem, mind problem. Body problem, mind problem. I can't sit, I can't sit. This problem, today I am this size, this got problem, that problem. Where is the chance to understand this knowledge? How do we know this? So that is why the sages are very, very compassionate. They are able to see what's going to come in 5,000 years hence. I mean, now we are here in this Kali Yuga, what is the situation? And they are asking this very just and important questions to Sutta Goswami. And we are so fortunate to have God Srila Prabhupada, a pure devotee spiritual master in our life, yet we are not serious. New Year, old year, new year, resolution, this, that, and then 1 year comes, goes, then another year comes and goes. Life continues. But what we don't realize is that our life energy is getting sapped. The vital energy of life is getting sapped in all these things. So that is the interesting aspect of this verse that we were discussing today. I'll stop here and see if you have any questions or comments. Okay. this that upadrata. If I don't finish, I'll feel incomplete. This one line. In this age, men are victims not only of different political creeds and parties, but also of many different types of sense gratificatory diversions, such as cinemas, sports, gambling, clubs, mundane libraries, bad association, smoking, drinking, cheating, pilfering, bickerings, and so on. Actually, that time the smartphone and this thing was internet was not there. Otherwise, first thing would have been that. Cinema, sports, well, even then, now also, cinema, sports, gambling, clubs, these are the ones which keep us engaged. Victims not only of different political creeds and parties, also of various different types of sense gratificatory diversions. Minds are always disturbed and full of anxieties. So many different engagements. Yeah, any questions? Sure.
Reflection. Understand
So this is so what happens is in Bhagavatam. Now Sukadev Goswami is talking about the appearance of Narada. Now when he's talking about that, so the situation changes. It's a curtain closed. So it is now Vyasadeva is doing this meditation. He's doing all those things. There it is happening in first person, not in third person. So they say as if Vyasadeva himself is going inside and reflecting what's going on and he's speaking. But the fact is he's not satisfied, and that is the reason why Narada Muni appeared. So it becomes first person, so we think how it is. But the way Bhagavatam narrates, so like there is a conversation which is happening between Vidura and Maitreya Rishi. So when they are talking about someone else, so Devahuti and Kapila, they will come in their conversation. So the conversation becomes as if Devahuti is saying, "My dear Kapila Dev, what should I do?" He doesn't say Devahuti asked Kapila Dev what should be done by her. So it's like, so now it is fully like the emotions that Vyasadeva is going through, the whatever his consciousness, everything, as if he's experiencing it, as if it is unfolding in front of you. It's way of present. Any other questions? Yeah. Dissatisfied. So what is the question? How is it possible? So incarnation of the Lord, you see the kind of literatures that Vyasadeva has written, forget about humanly, even machine wise, even all other, everything you put and you try to write those many literature, impossible. Mahabharata has got 100,000 verses. Iliad and Odyssey are considered to be the largest the longest written by human being. If you put that two together and multiply that by some 10 to 20 times minimum, that you'll come to even Mahabharata. Some authors, if they write 1 or 2 books, maybe 10, 15 books, they're done. I mean, that's a lot. To be able to write something like this, 4 Vedas, 108 Upanishads, Mahabharata, Puranas, 18 Puranas, possible. That requires special empowerment by the Lord. That's why he's called the literary incarnation of the Lord, to write. He came to put this in writing. And this is also the way the Lord wanted Bhagavatam to come about. Otherwise, why Parikshit would have asked this question? Why was he put into this kind of a... Didn't he know this? He was saved by the Lord from the birth itself. So was he not a devotee? He knew. But then still he goes and asks to Sukadev Goswami. Like that, Vyasadeva, this is the way, it's an arrangement by which the Bhagavatam is coming out. Or this is a way, like, Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Arjuna was put into this kind of a bewilderment so that Krishna can speak. That's how Bhagavatam comes. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Purana Brahma Samhita. Very question.
Wondering, the way normally let's say that we are unsatisfied. Yeah, today I'm unsatisfied, what is tomorrow is better. Move on. But he has found that this dissatisfaction is some anomaly. And he has taken some special steps, like I think the previous person was saying, like you should the one, should walk, and then back down and begin to reflect. Like that doesn't seem So is this a recommended way, or is there a good way to reflect? Arrive at the right. For example, if I am dissatisfied and if I'm thinking, somebody won't come and tell me that this is why it's what it should do.
Correct. So the answer is, see, Prabhu, the thing is, we sometimes in our life don't see the difference between our needs and a purpose of life. I can create my needs, I can extend my needs like anything because of the bombardments of information and the way things are. So there are some needs that I need to fulfill, like my bodily needs, my mental needs. I can do all of those. But then there is a difference between the needs fulfilling and our purpose in life. Needs, even if they are fulfilled fully, still I will be unsatisfied. It is only when I understand the purpose of human form of life, like, in the Bhagavatam verse, it is mentioned, Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaje ahetuki apratihata ye atma suprasidati. Suprasidati. Only when we realize that this is what is the whole purpose of human form of life, I should be, this is my constitutional position, let me be engaged in Krishna's service. Ahetuki apratihata, not just once in 1 year, 2 years or 3 years, I'll show. Ahetuki, causelessly, and apratihata, continuously. Yeah, the real satisfaction can come. Otherwise, as long as we are trying to satisfy our needs, we will not be satisfied. There is a difference between material intelligence and spiritual intelligence. Material intelligence, spiritual intelligence means I don't know anything. This is where it begins. Then one just follows it. Guru more murkha dekhi karila sasa. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says to this Prakasan, Ishwarapuri. No, but he is telling this to Prakashananda Saraswati, right? Guru more murkha dekhi karila sasa. So that if we come with all that, big burden and the huge false ego with us, then we are not receiving. We are not really trying to satisfy the spiritual master. Satisfying the spiritual master is not means just coming and just cleaning sometimes for 10-15 minutes and going back. It is understanding the mission and trying to see in my life how I can do something to expand this mission. The mission of Srila Prabhupada, that the compassion in his heart to take back this fallen conditioned souls. Can I do something? In what way I can utilize my skills, my talents, my whatever I've been given? How do I utilize that? That is what is devotion. Sometimes devotional service means people think, okay, after prasadam, 10 minutes I'll do. Aaj ka is hafte ka kota ho gaya. Next week we will see. That's not. It's good. But really it is that expanding the mission. Any question online? Okay, no question. We'll stop here. Jai Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna.